My name is Allan Gold. I was born in San Francisco in August 1946, so I'm 78 years old now. I had what I would consider a good Reform Jewish upbringing. Over those years, I really began to learn Jewish values, and I always was very proud of being Jewish. Fortunately, in San Francisco, I didn't grow up with anti-Semitism. I graduated from high school in 1963, turned 17 that summer, and went to, started at University of California in 1963, and my major was mathematics. And I graduated from Berkeley in 1967 and started a PhD program in statistics in 1967. And one of the biggest ironies in my life started to happen then. I was in the last cohort of students who got 1 year of deferment from being drafted into the military because it was right in the middle of the Vietnam War. So on April Fool's Day, oddly enough, of the next year, 1969, I joined a hospital unit here in the Presidio. After basic training, what specialty I wanted to be trained in, and my two choices were nurse or psychology social work specialist. And so I chose that. It was a couple of weeks shorter training, and I actually liked the training, which I had at Brooke Army Hospital in San Antonio. When you're in the Army Reserve, you have to go to summer camp. So I was flying home from summer camp in Fort Lewis, Washington, and talking to a fellow, and it turned out he was in a counseling and school psychology program at Stanford. I'd never even heard of school psychology before, but I thought, well, that sounds interesting. That fall, I applied for a school psychology program, got accepted, so I started my school psychology program in 1973, which I absolutely loved. And I got my PhD in 1978. And the irony, as I mentioned, was the last thing I wanted to do. I'd been at Berkeley with all the anti-war protests. The last thing I wanted to do was be in the military. And if I hadn't, then I probably wouldn't have had the career that made me so satisfied. The other piece of my development was my sexuality. Growing up in the 50s, there was really no vocabulary about it, and there were no role models for same-sex couples. When I was 19, I met a young woman in the neighboring dorm named Diane, and we eventually got married back in 1969. I sort of buried my gay feelings, and I wasn't dishonest about it. I think even Diane knew that I had those feelings, but I thought maybe by marriage they would go away. And we were married for about 4 years, and we separated and divorced in 1974. When I went to graduate school in school psychology, I had about 5 years of sowing wild oats, as they say. I was really experimenting with bisexuality. I really sort of came out around 1976. It was difficult for my parents to accept that. I told them. My mother felt guilty, and she didn't understand, you've always liked women and you got married, how can you be gay? And my father really almost stopped talking to me. They really had not a very good concept. And even through the 40s and 50s and 60s, there was a ton of prejudice against gay people. In November of 1978, the mayor of San Francisco, George Moscone, and the first gay supervisor, Harvey Milk, were killed at City Hall. And Shortly after that, there was a memorial service at this brand new synagogue named Shar Zahav, which means Golden Gate in English. And I went to that. And one of the first people I saw there was a young man whom I had gone to Sunday school at Temple Emmanuel with. And we'd known each other through confirmation. He went to Washington High School, not Lowell. But I saw him, and we'd known each other since 1953. We're still friends. And then I saw somebody that I was in the dorm with in Berkeley, and I hadn't seen him for 15 years. So my epiphany was, wow, you can be both gay and Jewish. And I joined Shar Zahav, and I've been a member ever since. I met my first male partner. And we got together the next year. We bought this house together. We broke up in 1985, and then I met my second partner in 1986. And in 1995, I met Allan, my future husband, and we had been together for 29 years. He passed away just about 3 months ago. A month after my 40th birthday, I took a test and found out I was HIV positive. It was just the year that tests for HIV, the AIDS virus, had been developed. So I went into what I would call a 3-year low-key depression because I wasn't sure if I was going to die. Some of my friends began to die. But I survived enough so that I was less scared, and I kept going to work in my job as school psychologist. I totally loved my job. So being a school psychologist in a small district really gave me the opportunity to do whatever I wanted, pretty much. I mean, obviously I had my responsibilities, but if an opportunity presented itself, I could take advantage of that. So over the years, I had all kinds of groups to support kids. About 5-6 years ago, I started a Teach Equity and Acceptance group. We called it a T Club, to really talk about lots of differences, racism, sexism, homophobia, learning differences, religious differences, all of that. And we met with kids during lunchtime, and we had sometimes from 30 to 60 kids who would come and talk. These were middle school kids, to talk about these different issues. And then about 5 years ago, I started a GSA club, Gender Sexuality Alliance, for kids who were questioning their gender identity or their sexual orientation, or were friends of those kids, allies. And we met on another day, and we had maybe 15 kids, and I could be very, very open. And speaking of being open, when I started my job in 1976, I was very hidden about being gay. When I turned 50, actually, in 1996, I had my ear pierced, and I remember very clearly when I would go to work, I would take the earring out because I didn't want somebody to think I was queer. However, in the 2000s, things began to open up. I was originally more open with faculty than I was with parents and kids. But in the last 20 years, kids would come to me, and I would share my own experience, particularly if they were questioning their own sexual identity or their sexual orientation. So I became much more open and free about myself. I put my own identity to use, but that Jewish identity, Jewish value of trying to make the world a better place, that it permeated my career, basically, because I felt like everything I was doing every day was trying to help kids feel better about themselves, get along better with each other, accept themselves, build their self-esteem. I retired last year after 47 and a half years there because Allan, my husband, was declining in his health from Parkinson's disease. I couldn't have worked and gone to visit him every day. So it was a big loss. Last year was very difficult for me, and this year, giving up my career and taking care of him and then losing him has been, a real challenge for me. One thing that has been very positive, actually, is former students who are now adults that still like to keep in contact with me, and a couple of them are like my own kids. It makes me feel like I can continue to be a helpful person. What I learned the most and learned more and more was what I call tikkun olam, which is doing good for the world, making the world a better place. And that was the main Jewish value that I have adopted. So over the many years, that Jewish value has motivated me to do what I can to try to make the world a better place. That's kind of a synopsis of my story. And again, thank you very much for letting me address you.